So welcome to Level Up, everybody, our weekly Q&A show where your questions drive our conversation. If you're watching live on LinkedIn, you're most welcome, or indeed on YouTube. Please do follow the little links in the chat to register, and we'll send you across to Slido, which is really where you get to join in and drive the show by voting up the questions that you want most answered. Without your questions, well, we don't actually have anything to talk about, so we'll just have to talk amongst ourselves. So do please head on over there. It'll be great to welcome you. In the first half of the show, well, we focus on general Q&A, and this week's theme is all about cyber resilience. So you can pretty much ask anything that you would like relating to that. In the second half, we choose a topic that we want to spend a little bit more time on, and more of that to come later. So let's dive straight into it. We'll meet our panel for today. So I'd like to begin, if I can, here in the UK with introducing Nicola Cooper, who's joining us from Glasgow in Scotland. Nicola built her career in financial services, enabling teams to make better informed decisions through providing information and governance. Nicola is a founding member of the Ladies of Glasgow Hacking Society, a social enterprise providing technical security development and training for women. So welcome, Nicola. Please do tell us a little bit more about yourself and your current role.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Nick. I'm an Information Security and Resilience Manager for Virgin Money UK. The key elements of my role cover supplier risk, evaluating technology solutions, being delivered by projects and assessing the security risks of them, and ensuring compliance with information security policies and standards.
Okay, and an absolutely key role, especially at the moment when we're so reliant on, from a customer's perspective about all of our banking services being joined up, but at the same time making sure that everything stays, appropriately safe and secure. So really, really good, and very nice to have you on the panel. Thank you very much for joining us. Let's move on now to talk to Rick, who is over in the US. Rick Lemieux, who's the co-founder and chief product officer with itSM Solutions. And he's also responsible for their entire training program on the NIST cybersecurity standard. So Rick, are you still in one piece at the moment with all the bad weather that's been hitting the eastern seaboard?
Yes, fortunately, the storm actually went further west, so it didn't really impact us that much. So pretty happy about that. I didn't think I was going to be able to attend today's session because of a power loss, but I was fortunate enough not to have that happen here. So all good. So as Nick said,
I'm glad that.
Go ahead, Nick. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna
please go ahead. Yeah.
Further elaborate on what I do. As Nick mentioned, I'm the co-founder and chief product officer here at itSM Solutions. Our focus is we're a publisher who creates cybersecurity risk management curriculum that's been certified and recognized by the National Cybersecurity Center in the UK, which is part of the GCHQ. And also by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security CISR organization. So our focus is really about helping organizations manage their cyber risk, which in turn would improve their cyber resiliency. So that's what I do every single day, and really enjoy what I do.
Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you very much for getting up early. It's a lot earlier for you than it is for us, so thank you for that. And let's move back across to the UK, and we'll nip back up to Scotland again and introduce Martin Smith. Martin is the MD of Cyber Prism, who help companies come to grips with operational technology security. And that's kind of on the back of 33 years service with the military, during which at one stage, Martin, I think you were responsible for Britain's maritime counter-terrorism. Is that right? That must have been a very interesting role for you.
Yeah, hi Nick. Good afternoon, everyone. Absolutely fascinating. But I also did quite a lot to do with information superiority when I was with the armed forces, and I think that's the read across to what I'm doing now. We actually concentrate primarily in Cyber Prism on what we call OT, operational technology. So industrial control systems, the systems that are maintaining the flow of oil and the maintain the temperature of the power station. So not necessarily the sort of subjects that are going to come up today, but there is quite a lot of read across, and I hope I'll be able to provide some useful insights.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that, you know, your world and our worlds, you know, touch points on multiple times, Martin, is just thinking about all of that technology that we have embedded in our systems and solutions as organizations around the world. If you're working in industrial controls, you'll be very familiar with, you know, the kind of programming languages that, you know, that perhaps have become less popular these days, but nonetheless absolutely critical to maintain that infrastructure and keep it all secure. So very good.
Yeah, there's a lot of legacy in operational technology. Quite right, Nick.
Absolutely. Thank you very much indeed. So let's move on to introduce Tim Harwood, who's also a veteran of the security world. And he's the Chief Executive and founder of Siker Cyber, whose expertise includes extensive knowledge of the oil and gas industry. Tim, whereabouts are you joining us from?
So I'm joining from the Essex Riviera, as I referred to it, just north of Clacton, and it's a nice place to be. You know, the weather's shining. You're quite right, though. I focus on the oil and gas, but actually any of the industrial side. It's one of those areas I've got 40 plus years experience in this, and I still learn something every day. You know, every day is a school day, as they say. And as long as we keep looking the right way at some of this stuff and understanding, yes, Martin's quite right, there's lots of legacy stuff out there. I think a lot of the problem sometimes is people understanding what does normal look like as a start point, because it's only then can you understand what abnormal means.
Absolutely. Thank you very much indeed, Tim. And thank you for joining us. And for those of you who don't know the UK that well, then hop over to Google Maps and have a look. Just kind of find London, head to the right, and you'll see where we're talking about. So very good. So thank you for that, Tim. That's really grand. And last but not least is Mark Johnson, who's joining us today on our panel and is going to be leading us on our focus topic, chartered IT professional who develops amazing courseware to help people learn all about cyber. And one of your clients at the moment, you're involved with designing and delivering cyber crime and cryptocurrency, cyber fraud type training. Is that right, Mark?
Hi, Nick. Hi, everyone. Yes, that's correct. So we deliver courses accredited by APMG and also by National Cybersecurity Centre for the likes of CIFAS, the City London Police, and the Home Office. Mm-hmm. And you're quite right. We've just finished creation of an e-learning course on blockchain and cryptocurrency. And our focus is always on demystifying. So we sort of sit between the basic sort of awareness training and the more advanced sort of pen test, hacking, cybersecurity training, and try to demystify a topic for people who need to understand it but are not technical. So a police officer running a murder inquiry or a manager in an organization.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much indeed. So really looking forward to you taking us through today's focus topic, which is all about, you know, kind of thinking about how to be secure, productive and professional when we're working from home. So look, everybody, if you feel that you could join us on the panel, that you can answer some of the questions that we raised today, it would be brilliant to hear from you. So please do just let us know, and we'll bring you on board for one of our future shows. So let's jump straight into the questions. So what I'll do is I'll read out the question. So the question is how to assess if employees are being appropriately trained on cyber security. So it's more of an assessment type question. I'm just looking across to colleagues on the panel for, you know, who might like to jump in and start to answer that. So Mark, let's start off with you, and then we'll go to Martin next.
Thanks, Nick. So assessment is always the biggest challenge, and what I found with a lot of cybersecurity training is that it's either too simplistic and patronizes the employee, may even be boring because it can be very repetitive, or it's too advanced and starts, you know, someone jumps up on a screen and starts writing scripts, for example. I've seen that several times. Right. So I think the first step is to make sure that you understand your audience and that you're pitching the topic at an appropriate level based on their ability to understand what you're describing and their responsibilities and obviously the nature of the organization. And then you can develop a test plan. And there are a range of things you can do. You can have feedback, you can discuss, you can pen test, you can do phishing tests, but all of that must be based on making sure in the first instance that you deliver training that is digestible by that audience. Otherwise, your testing is a waste of effort.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And Martin?
Yeah, hello.
Yeah, we can, thank you. Yeah.
I think that's just
That's
clicked
a
on.
relief. So that's good.
Great. Yeah, I can. Everyone through a very basic awareness course of some form or another might that might be purely online, and then you'll have provided specific targeted training for people with more specific responsibilities. Each one of those courses will have come with some kind of exam at the end of it, so you can check to see how your people did on that exam. But I think I'd agree with Mark that assessment really needs to be continual assessment. It's what you do after that, either at individual level or organizational level. And you can move up through phishing testing, team level exercises, and then as the maturity of your organization improves, go to full-blown business continuity exercises, which probably ought to be conducted at least once a year. And you'll have a mix of programmed test exercises and those that aren't programmed, to see what people's normal daily function is like without knowing that a test is about to hit them.
Yeah, I think that that's quite important. And one of the things that certainly differentiates organizations in terms of their maturity is their ability to be able to cope under extreme conditions, extreme levels of stress and disruption. And I think that previously, a year ago or so, I don't think any of us would have sat through a scenario where everybody had to work from home, where nobody was allowed actually to travel, where everybody needed to be equipped to be able to work in a more hybrid and a remote manner. So yeah, really, really, really important to practice all of that. Rick, we'll come to you now, and then Tim to finish us off.
Yeah, assessment is always is an important piece of the puzzle. In fact, it's the first step that every organization needs to go through. And I think, organizations, there are two pieces to the training piece. One is you need to assess the organization's cybersecurity culture. And I'm just talking about, the worker bees. I'm talking all the way from the executive team down to the worker bees. What is the culture of the business in terms of cybersecurity or cybersecurity risk management? Once you understand that, I think one of the most important things you need to identify is if the mid-level management team is engaged in the culture that that the executives want them to be, engaged in. In other words, the folks below the mid-level management won't even, you could train them till they turn a different color. If the management team is not bought into a culture of cybersecurity, it won't flow downstream to the rest of the organization. So I think the first step in the process is to really assess your culture, and then from that be able to identify where you need training and what type of training do you need to support a change in that culture. It could be the traditional e-learning programs, it could be simulation programs, it could be a combination of both. But I think right now a lot of organizations are spending a lot of money on training. It's kind of, I call it the spray and pray approach. They put it out there, they hope people take it, and they hope they change their behaviors as a result of that. But I think the events that show up on our screens every single day are proof that that doesn't work. So I think it really comes back to taking a much higher level look at an organization to understand its culture, especially at the executive and management level, And I think once you've got the management teams fully engaged in developing a strategy and then executing on that strategy, it will flow downstream into the rest of the organization. And I think an organization will be more resilient and will be able to determine if the training is delivering the results that they expect.
Very good. Thank you. Some really good sound advice there, Rick and Tim.
Certainly building on what Rick has just articulated there, once we've got that idea of where we, what's our current state, where do we want to be as a target state, and utopia might not be achievable, but to understand what knowledge and skills do we want our people to have, and then what level of those do we need. So building that pattern of understanding skills and competency and levels of associated skills and competency for each role in the business is really important. Then you can look at the courses and understand, do they need awareness? Do they need training? And they are two different things. One focuses very much on skills and one focuses on the behavioral risk of the people. And there's a discussion going on in the industrial sector at the moment is, should we even be calling it cybersecurity, or should we actually be looking at the term cyber safety? Because really in our industry, it's more about, can we effectively protect the business, and when we can't, shut it down safely. So we need to look at the safety aspect. And of course, calling it safety, you might actually get more budget as well.
Fair enough. I think that there's a few things that I would add to all of that. Firstly, one of the things that we've been finding is to really take a good look on who needs access to what information, what frequency there is around that, and the actual level of business need. Personally, I try to opt out if I can. From having access directly into our operational systems. There's not really any need for me in my role to have that, and it just keeps me, kind of out of the security risk entirely. If I'm not accessing, if I don't, in theory, have access to information that I just really don't need in order to be able to do my role. So that's a really important part of it. Just really think that through, and also then, particularly during this period of time where we've needed to think up new ways of working in a more distributed kind of fashion, actually thinking about, why do you need to move information around? Can you actually do some of the work that you can do without actually extracting or transforming or moving that information from one place to another? So a couple of different thoughts for you there, in addition to, thinking about that level of assessment that needs to be done. And it's about really working with people to understand what their needs are on a more thorough basis, as well as where they're up to with their attainment level in understanding. So very good. Thank you very much, panel. Very interesting. And thank you to Sabina from Poland for asking the question. Great question. So Charlotte, let's move on to the next question, please.
Hi, can you hear me now?
We can. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay. Question from Jaap in Houlton, the Netherlands. Is there an affordable, in brackets, simple solution for small businesses, low cost and simple to implement?
Okay, so this is really in the realm of cybersecurity. This is not in the realm of trying to solve the common cold or, kind of solve everybody's business problems all in one go. I mean, I guess I'm going to start us off here and then invite the panel to have a think. The first place that I would go, Jaap, is to have a look at your own, at the Dutch equivalent of the National Cybersecurity Centre. All governments now publish really good advice for citizens, small businesses particularly, about how to keep your business safe and secure online. So go and have a look at those resources. Invariably, they're free of charge and they're available to you. And you can access those locally and find out, what is it that the Dutch government is actually doing in order to be able to promote, safe working online. We also then, on top of that, have a number of international standards that kind of can help. And I was wondering if I might come to you, Rick, and actually ask you specifically, are things like the NIST standards, are they easy for people to be able to just log on to the NIST website and understand them, or do they really need a little bit of help in addition to reading the standard itself?
Yeah, no, the NIST standards, especially the NIST framework, was designed initially for all the key critical sectors, some of them mentioned earlier by Tim and others in the energy sector and government sectors and so on. But they're also designed to help small businesses put in place the 5 basic functions that are required to ensure that a business is safe or secure. And those functions are the ability to identify, detect, protect, respond, and recover from a cyber attack. Now, what they do in the framework is they provide you some additional guidance on controls or management systems that you could put in place, to support those functional capabilities. And they're really not that difficult to do. But then again, if you've never done it before, it may seem like you're trying to, invent a rocket ship, So you may need to work with some local consultants or managed service providers who can guide you through that process and help you do it. Or you could even sit through some formal training programs that will teach you, how to do it. And there are many programs out there. We happen to have one ourselves that, provide that capability. But, small business is a major focus area of the NIST framework, because there are millions of small businesses that are primary targets for the hackers, versus some of the bigger businesses, which tend to have better systems and better controls in place. So the framework does, I think, provide a capability, or at least a way for an organization to take advantage of all of the work that they've done to help them put together a simple and affordable and implementable solution.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. And it is definitely worthwhile checking out. If you're working in the UK, do have a look on the NCSC website. That's the UK's National Cybersecurity website. And look particularly under initiatives such as Cyber Essentials, which kind of gives you a really entry level, but a thorough understanding of what it is that you might need to do if you're working in a small business. The other thing that I would say as well is that we've had some really great initiatives brought to us from colleagues within APMG who have made different suggestions and have brought ideas and working practices into the company. So it's always worthwhile, to talk to your colleagues and get their input as well. Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, I think there's some really good frameworks that can help sit on top of that as well. For example, the Centre for Internet Security have got their 20 critical security controls, where they lay it down as basic, the 6 basic things that you need to take a look at and start with. Arguably, people would turn around and say that really you should be starting with understand staff awareness and training, so critical control 17, and then understand a point of being able to respond to an incident, or at least identify. The other one that I would always take a good look at is the Australian Signals Directive, where they produced a thing called the Essential 8, which are the 8 basic things that a company should consider, but they've also very nicely assigned a maturity level to each as well. So I think it might not be a solution as such, but I think it's a good place to understand what others might be asking of you as well.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Tim. And Nicola, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I work with a lot of fintech organisations and supporting them to increase and improve their security posture. And one of the things that we always recommend is that they try their best to align to the ISO 27001 standards. So obviously, international standard for good practice and how to manage information security. And if they can kind of align their internal policies and procedures to that, it's a really good starting point.
Yeah, I completely agree. ISO 27000 comes up, multiple times in conversations, and you can see the kind of DNA of those international standards in all of the guidance which is being given out by different countries. So it's a brilliant place to begin. And if you're not familiar with it, there's loads of resources and information that are available on the internet for you to make a start. And of course, you can tap into the expertise of anybody, who's on the panel as well. Just, find them on LinkedIn and connect in the normal way, and, start to build your network around that. So really good. So great question. Thank you, Yap, for helping us to think about, small businesses and, where we should begin to improve our cyber resilience. Charlotte, can we have the next question, please?
Question from Peter in London in the UK. What does a SSL certificate do on a website, and why do I need one?
All right. Okay. So this is pretty straightforward technical question. What does an SSL certificate actually do on a website, and why, if you're, I'm assuming, Peter, that you have a website, why does Peter actually need one? What does it signify when he has that little certificate to be able to make those connections? My understanding, and I'm not a web developer, Peter, is it's all to do with the way in which your browser makes the connection to the website itself, and the way in which the information is encrypted and passed to and from your browser to it. It just makes it more difficult for people to be able to jump into that communication and intercept it. Basically, and having an SSL certificate will certainly, show to everybody else on the internet that you are taking your own website security seriously, and the information of your customers or whoever it is that's actually interacting with that website. So most modern browsers these days do demonstrate very clearly if a website does not have an up-to-date and a valid SSL certificate, and in fact they may well warn you away from any website that doesn't have that basic level of encryption happening from the web server. So always worthwhile to do that and to keep your website up to date. If you are a small business and you're using a third-party provider to build your website on and to host your website, do talk to their technical team about how important it is to manage and maintain your own website and the kind of levels of security that you might need for the sort of business that you run. Okay, very good. So thank you for that question, Charlotte. Let's move on, please.
Question from Sabina in Poland, Warsaw. What are the biggest cybersecurity threats right now?
All right, interesting. So we've had lots of news on the television. What would the panel say are the most prevalent threats right now, Nicola, and then Rick?
I think that really insider threats are becoming kind of one of the biggest threats that we really need to keep an eye on going forward. Phishing obviously continues to be a massive threat for organisations. Supply chain threats are huge. Obviously, we've kind of seen a lot in the news recently on that, particularly with the SolarWinds incident that we recently saw. Weak passwords and kind of login credentials obviously are something that are giving cyber criminals an easy way in. So that's something that continues to be a threat, and we need to educate in that. And malware and ransomware is really kind of what we've kind of been seeing over the last couple of years. Anything that causes disruption, that's a nuisance, obviously something that's likely to get a payout from is something that's going to continue being a massive threat.
Yeah, I think certainly the level of sophistication now on phishing is something which is extraordinary. In the early days, you could kind of spot these things like I don't have many uncles that set off in search of the origin of rivers in far-flung countries, so I was never likely to inherit a fortune. So those kinds of emails I could kind of spot fairly early on, but now we're getting text messages, we're getting quite sophisticated phishing attempts by individuals where they look and feel and they almost sound really genuine. So it's quite tricky to always keep your kind of guard up, if you like, around those. So I think you're absolutely right. And you also talked there a little bit more about that kind of sense of the ransomware. So we might hold that thought for a moment, Nicola, and come back to that in a minute. So Rick and then Tim.
Well, I think ransomware is probably the top of list on my mind. There's been more and more attacks. Just last week, they were talking about the ransom people who are issuing the ransomware are now recruiting employees to participate in the implementation or the installation of the ransomware, where they'll give them 10% of the cut for doing that. So you can imagine now your insider threat has just changed dramatically. If somebody's down on their luck or having a tough time or needs to pay a medical bill, that $1 million sounds really attractive. So now you've got an insider threat, that you need to deal with on ransomware outside of the external threat that exists today. The other thing is, I'm not sure if anyone has seen this yet, but because it's kind of late breaking, but the insurance industry is now revisiting cyber insurance with a specific focus around ransomware. They are no longer, or they are moving towards, kind of having a copay. So if you get ransomware and there's a $5 million ransom, they'll pay 2.5, you pay 2.5. All right, and they're basically saying that the copay will be reduced based upon the number of security controls and management systems you have in place to mitigate your risk and so on. So it isn't just let's just go sell them an insurance policy and let's see how big we can grow this market. I think the insurance industry is now realizing this is a real problem, and it's costing them a lot more money than they're taking in. So the whole landscape of insurance to be a support mechanism for ransomware is changing. The other thing is phishing. Phishing is, I think at the same level as ransomware. In fact, right before this call today, you mentioned, Nick, my text went off. It was telling me that my bank account was compromised. Now, fortunately, the bank that they identified wasn't my bank, so I didn't click on it, and I probably wouldn't click on it anyways. But then again, I'm in this business. A lot of other people would have clicked on it. The other issue in phishing comes down to emails that are being sent to financial people to pay bills. And it happened to me personally. My finance person received supposedly an email from me that said, pay this bill for $18,000. I've authorized it. And thank God we have two-factor approvals embedded in our business model. So my partner calls me, says, what are you doing approving this $18,000? What are you talking about? And so as we dug deeper into it, we looked at the URL, and instead of it being itSM Solutions, it was itsmisolutions.com. The stranger part was we got another email from another organization that basically told us we were going to be, attacked that day due to that registration of that domain name. So there's all different ways that phishing emails can impact your business. Right. And so,
thank you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you very much. Some really good examples there. So Tim, I just want to squeeze you in, if I may, and we'll have the last kind of comment on this from you. And then what I want to do is move across to our kind of focus topic of the day, and we'll ask Mark to lead us through that. So Tim, go ahead.
Thanks, Nick. I think one of the biggest threats at the moment is a complete lack of understanding of what the threats are, and I think a lot of people are told, quick, we need to defend our networks, but they don't actually understand how they can be attacked. And also they don't understand what they're supposed to be securing. So the ransomware, gets through. They don't necessarily have this advanced knowledge of the tactics and the techniques being used by the attackers. So they might be spending a lot of money on devices and training in totally the wrong place. So I think they've got to learn to think like an attacker before they can effectively defend their networks. And that can only be done by some deep understanding of the actual threat space and how it's evolving.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. Well, thank you very much. The time always flies on these sessions, and we're already kind of halfway through today's slot. So we've scratched the surface a little bit, and we're going to come back and hear a little bit more from Nicola after the focus topic as well. So so let's shift gears, if we can, a little bit, and join Mark. So today's topic is really all about working from home around the world. More professionals are having to step up, as we all are, to the front line of being in charge of our own cybersecurity as we kind of piggyback on our own personal home infrastructure and repurpose it. I don't think any of us really thought in 2019 that we'd be having to negotiate for bandwidth with our partners, with teenagers, even with our neighbours sometimes, you know, or even to try and find precious moments of silence during the day in which to make an important call. At that time, our kitchens kind of remained well-minded, you know, perhaps a little messy, as it rarely appeared on camera. So anyway, look, I'd like to hand over now to Mark, who's going to take us through how to create a secure, productive and a professional workspace at home. Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you, Nick. So very, very valid comment about the teenagers. I had to send one upstairs a few minutes ago to read a book because he was, wanted to use the bandwidth. So working from home, so this is obviously based on my experience. I've been working from home for almost 20 years now, running a small business, admittedly, but working for some very large clients and often subject to the rules that those clients put in place. So I have both perspectives, the big organization and the small business. But I'm going to start from a slightly different angle. I will get into some of the technical stuff, but I'm going to talk about us as the person in the home, because very often we forget that we are the most important asset in this building when work is being done from home, and we have to look after ourselves. I just want to touch on that a little bit, because I think that's where working from home is particularly dangerous. It can really lead you astray and cause you to cause yourself some harm, actually. So next slide, please, Nigel. So the first and perhaps most important thing to think about when working from home isn't actually, you know, the encryption on the laptop. It's the ergonomics. It's, am I sitting comfortably? Can I sustain this? Do I have opportunities to stand and work? Can I walk around? Just making sure that you are physically comfortable, because discomfort has numerous implications. It's not just an issue of health. It's also an issue of concentration. You're more likely to be stressed. You're more likely to be perhaps susceptible to social engineering if you're unhappy and stressed and just not in a comfortable situation. So I do think that's really important. Businesses know that, and we need to focus on that at home as well. The chair that you sit in is the most important thing. I bought 3 different, you know, high-spec office chairs in the last couple of years. All of them are £500 and up, and I've ended up with my oldest sofa chair, which I put on a pallet, and I put wheels on the pallet, and that's actually been the best solution for me. So think outside the box sometimes. Next slide, please, Nigel. Thank you. Staying on the topic of you, the person, physical well-being. If you're no longer commuting, if you used to commute and you stop commuting to work from home, you have an hour or 2 or even 4 that you didn't have available to yourself previously. Don't spend those 4 hours working. Take an hour out each day and take a walk the dog, go to the gym, go for a run, ride a bike, whatever it is that you do. Work that your system, your body, because that is the most important system you have. Next slide, please. And then there's the mind. Working from home is as stressful, if not more stressful, than working in an office. You don't have any breaks very often. You don't have those little chit-chat moments. You don't have a canteen to go to. You'll grab your sandwich and bring it back to your desk. You're on call all the time because the company is paying you to sit at your desk at home. Take care of your mind. Make space. Find a corner. Find a shed in the back of the garden. Last summer, I turned a shed into a summer office so that I could have a different environment. I could travel from the office I'm sitting in now to my summer office, and you really do feel like you've taken a little holiday and you're in a different place, even though it's only 50 yards away, 40 yards away. So mental well-being, very, very important. Next slide, please. And diet. Very easy. Pop down to the supermarket, buy all the little snacks, the chocolate covered biscuits and the chocolate bars, and put them in the fridge. My fridge is actually, that's actually the corner of my fridge behind me. You can see this. That's how far away my food is from me. You've got to be disciplined. My tip there is eat before you go shopping. Okay, whether shopping online or at the supermarket, eat something, then go shopping and buy healthy, because this is the best opportunity for you to live a healthy lifestyle, but the least likely environment in which you're going to do that. Next slide, please. Now we get into a bit more of the stuff you're probably expecting to hear about, and I'm starting here with physical security. Now, whether you're setting up your own business from home or you're working for a company, a large organization, from your home, you are now responsible for the physical perimeter. You might be given some assistance, you very often won't be. You need to think about that perimeter as if it was the corporate office. Okay. So who has keys? What types of locks do you have? How accessible is your building? I've installed or had installed professional burglar alarms with 24-hour monitoring, contact and motion. So all of these things that you would normally encounter at the office now need to be included in your home. And if you have children, teenage children with keys, these are people who can access your home in your absence. So you might even want to think about locking the office space if you have a separate office space. Speaking of office space, I'm thinking now in terms of people who are going to be working from home in the long term, because the pandemic, hopefully, touch wood, won't keep us at home much longer. Many are already back at work. But if you're going to be at home in the long term, I highly recommend creating a dedicated office space, not using a dining table, not working in the kitchen, but taking a room. In my case, I took this is the dining room, and I calculated what I was saving on travel in a year, which added up to £4,000. And I spent £4,000 on converting the dining room to a proper office. It makes you feel more professional. It looks more professional if you're talking to clients. Obviously not, this won't be for everyone, but I highly recommend you think about that option. Next slide, please. Now we move into application security. You are your own system administrator. You might have a corporate laptop, you might not. I actually have a mix. I've got laptops that I administer, and I've got clients who give me laptops to work on for their projects, which I'll come back to in a minute. But you'll very often be installing applications, you'll be using social media, you'll be getting Zoom running and all these other applications. You need to understand how to set those up securely. Sadly, the default option on most of these applications is not secure, it's the insecure option. So you have to go in, either look for a corporate guideline or do your own research and find out what constitutes secure configuration for each application that you use. That's now your responsibility. Next slide, please. Then there's data security. So I invested in, where are they? I invested in a couple of these. This 256-bit AES 256-bit encryption, 1 terabyte drives, and that's where I do my backup, because I'm exposed. I don't have the corporate backup facilities in my small business. And then when I go anywhere, my laptop bag is just over here, and I just drop this in my laptop bag so that when I leave the building, my data backup travels with me. And if the house burns down in my absence, God forbid, I've got all my data. So data security, encryption, data at rest, data in transit. I think I've got VPN in another slide, but that's a critical consideration. Next slide, please. Data segmentation. So I mentioned the 2 or 3 laptops. In fact, I've got 4 laptops in the room. I actually use a laptop per project, and I have 2 of these backup systems as well. So I'm constantly, very consciously segmenting my data client by client, project by project, so that if I lose one device, I only lose data related to one project, and also there's minimal chance of any sort of crossover or sending people the wrong files, which is one of the most common mistakes people make. Next slide, please. Insurance. Your home is your office, maybe a business that you're running, or you may be representing your organization. But unless you're covered by corporate insurance, and you need to ask that question, you really do need to invest in insurance. So not just typical home insurance, but you're going to think about professional liability, and you're going to think about visitors coming to your office. I have clients who come to my home where my company is registered, so they're coming to my office. And I need to make sure that if anything happens, if they trip and fall, that I'm covered for that as well. Next slide, please. So connectivity and VPN. I had issues at one point early on delivering training, unreliable internet. So I ended up with 2 providers. And I also use VPN. I use Proton VPN out of Switzerland. It's a paid service, but it's very secure. There was a question on the list I saw about VPN, so here's my answer to that question. It depends on who you choose as a provider, whether you're secure or not. And I find Proton VPN and Proton Mail as a backup email system. I don't use it for most of my business activity, but it's there as a backup. Very highly recommend them. So think about how you're going to connect, whether you need more than one provider. I've also got a dongle, and of course you can use your mobile phone to establish a connection too. And my ex-wife allows me to access her house if I need to use her Wi-Fi. She's 5 minutes away. That's my backup hot site. So next slide, please. Human contact. Okay, the most dangerous aspect of working from home is that you're at risk of losing contact with human beings. Get out of the home. Okay? And next week I'm going down for some away drinks in London for a client. Go and have lunch with your customers. Go and have lunch with your virtual colleagues. I have 4 virtual colleagues in the organization, and we meet up. In fact, one of them's coming over at the end of the month. We meet up on a regular basis, in addition to normal social life, of course, but keep that business human contact going, because that's how businesses operate. It's not just about technology and reports and slideware. It's also about the interplay between people. And so make an effort. Put a reminder in your calendar. I have a reminder every Thursday, and it says human contact, and it pops up with it. I just think, yes, I need to do something about that. And next slide, please, Nigel. So in summary, don't just dive into working from home. Make a business plan. Working from home is a business venture. Think about what you're doing. Think about what you can afford to spend and why you're spending it. Run it like a business. Do that cost-benefit analysis. Think about, of course, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. There's 3 critical topics in cybersecurity, and apply that to the data that you're working with, whether it's your own business data or clients' data. And remember, most important point, you are your most critical asset. Take care of that asset and nurture yourself. Thank you. Thanks, Nigel.
Well, thank you very much, Mark. Really interesting in kind of thinking through, all of those different topics. There are a number of things that you said that really struck a chord with me. First of all, certainly from that, healthy point of view, I need to do better. I need to do better on that. I need to think differently, and certainly shop differently. All right, in order to be able to do that. And also, I think you make a really good point. As this has gone on, those the first kind of 8 weeks, 10 weeks for a lot of people were unplanned. They'd never really thought about having to do the day-to-day business from their own homes, but now kind of 18 months into all of this, then making a plan. Maybe it's time now to rethink some of the things that you were doing in those early days, particularly around insurances, and particularly around sustaining a more hybrid way of working and doing it in a more professional way. I think we can all kind of level up our game a little bit more there. And Nicola, is this something that when you're kind of thinking about reaching out to look at the supply chain of people that provide information and services into your organisation, are these the kinds of things that you're looking for, at least in principle?
Absolutely, yep. We work with them to make sure that they've got all the things that Mark mentioned considered. Obviously, we measure their security posture. We work with them to try and increase that. We try and encourage them to think about all the things that, like ISO 27001, as we talked about earlier, talks about with regards to access and security, confidentiality and integrity, availability of data and such like. So, yeah, really good key topic, good presentation, Mark.
Okay, very good. All right, well, very good. Well, we'll pop Mark back in the hot seat, and what I'd like to do is flip over to Charlotte to see if we've got some questions on the focus topic to follow up with Mark on, please.
Hi, Mark. We've got plenty of questions to ask you. The first one, as you can see on screen, from Sabina in Poland: how to find a good balance between security and usability while managing teams working from home?
Yes, well, I don't know specifically. I assume you mean managing teams, not managing capital T teams, but Teams is a good example. Teams, the application. So it's this is the challenge, and I'm really not happy with the marketplace. I'm really not happy with the quality of security controls that we're being given in the applications that we're using. And you may have seen the criticism that Zoom has been coming in from Germany, or I believe, if I'm not wrong, they're either on the verge of or have already said that it's a GDPR breach, in effect, to use Zoom. Sorry, and I suspect that will extend to other apps as well. So I think that until there's a baseline, until regulators create some sort of baseline standard for these types of business application that we're now using, that we're going to have to do that ourselves. And we're going to have a hybrid approach. This is the phrase that most people are using now. And there are some things that simply are not appropriate for discussion online. And in those cases, we need to get together in a room. So we have to, just face the fact that at some point we're going to have to start traveling again when there is a justification for it, not just to, make somebody feel important, but when there's a real security justification for a particular conversation, we should travel. On other occasions, in other words, there's a classification system. Okay? So we need to consider the topic of conversation and whether or not that is appropriate for an online event or whether it should be done in person. So that's the first sort of principle I would want to establish. Now, obviously, that there'll be people who can't comply, and there need to be secure mechanisms in place for them to dial in. Most large organizations will have VPN in place for that, but smaller businesses, which is where I focus most of my time, are going to have to really think that through. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but that's where I see the balance between security and usability.
Yeah, I think it's a really, and thank you. I think that's a very, very insightful thing. All of these tools kind of come with a cost. We may have saved some of the dollars and the euros and the pounds from the travel budget, but actually we need to think quite carefully about, how are we using that infrastructure, and what information, are we making discoverable on the internet? We need to think about those things which are most appropriate to keep, personal and private, and those things which are company confidential, those things which are relevant for an industry domain and participating on a domain basis, and then those things which are, available to, to everybody, and that can include, a whole range of different aspects of the meeting spaces that we have been using, over this last year, 2 years or so now. So it's definitely worthwhile just kind of thinking about that on our own approach to organizing those sessions, and certainly from a, managing that information, and really thinking about as well how the regulators in different countries are interpreting, the privacy regulations. Certainly, Apple have been taking, a stronger lead recently in the way in which it's been designing some of its operating systems, notably for mobile devices. And I think that is certainly a trend that individual citizens around the world are looking for from technology providers, is to make privacy the default and discoverability actually an exception. And that has not always been the case. As the internet has grown and developed into, the kind of global communication infrastructure that it is today. So no, really interesting. Thank you very much, Mark. So let's move on to the next question, please, Charlotte.
Question from Elise in Boston, Massachusetts. What is the single most important thing I can do for security when I'm working from home?
Okay, the single most important thing. Let's start off with Mark, and then panel. I'd like to come to you because we're almost at the top of the hour.
There's actually two things. It's encryption, and it's managing access to your devices, not sharing them with your kids.
Okay, all right, very good. Tim?
Yeah, I was going to echo what Mark said there. Keep the kids away from it. You know, at the end of the day, everybody working from home has had an impact on your organisation's attack surface. And therefore, from a risk management perspective, that's changed the profile of the business. Yeah, keep the kids away. Keep them off the same network, or segregate the network if possible.
Okay, all right, very good. Martin?
Back up, and back up some more. And by all means, use the space on the cloud that SharePoint or a similar system might be giving you, but also do use offline backup devices judiciously as well. You probably need to be thinking about backing up to one of those at least once a week.
Okay, all right, very good. Thank you very much. Any last closing thoughts from anybody else on the panel about the key thing that you would want to encourage others to practice when working from home? Okay, Nicola?
I think just kind of echoing what everybody else has said, yeah, keep kids and family off the devices that you're using. Obviously, the more kind of gaming websites and different things people are downloading and all the rest of it and accessing increases the risk of malware being introduced into your device, which is obviously something that you don't want. So, yeah, keep everything separate where you can.
Okay, all right, very good. And I'd like to echo that entirely. I don't have that problem. The only other person in my home is Ernie, who's a spaniel. So generally, he keeps his life quite separate to mine. So I don't have that problem. But I do have some other ones. So there we go. So thank you very much indeed, everybody on the panel. Really, really appreciate your time today. And as ever, to the folks who submitted the questions, brilliant. You know, thank you so much. There were really some excellent questions for us to consider. We really thank you for everybody who joined us online and submitted your questions. Great job. So next week in the Level Up series, we turn our attention to organizational agility. What is it? How do I get it? And what are the tools, tips, and techniques that we need to become more agile as an organization, whether it's, you know, as a small business or alternatively as a large multinational or a corporate of some form or another. So do join us next week. If, as I said earlier, if you've had value from today and you would like to join us on the panel for a future episode, then do follow the little link that you can see on screen. When you get to the registration page, just tick the little box that says you're interested in becoming a panelist in the future, and one of the talent management team will reach out to you so that you can join us on a future show. So thank you very much indeed, everybody. Take care and enjoy the rest of your week. Thanks. Bye-bye now.